in a single year for the first time since 2003. We are confident that this downward trajectory will persist, as these results stem from our deliberate planning, strategic investments, and targeted efforts to dismantle organized criminal gangs. Mr. President, let us recall that the drop in murders from 2009 to 2014, for which the opposition had sought to take credit, was a direct result of the states of emergency launched in May 2010 by the Jamaica Labour Party administration. These measures dismantled and scattered gangs and created a 21% drop in murders in 2011 and stabilization in 2012. This created a period of respite during which targeted police operations against gangs and violence producers resulted in 2014 recording the lowest numbers of murder in the previous 20 years. In mid-2014, the People's National Party introduced Unite for Change, an ostensible crime-fighting strategy that leaned heavily on social interventions. There was also a change of police commissioners, an apparent shift in crime-fighting strategy. By 2015, murders began to rise again, and even the much-touted Unite for Change initiative was in full effect. The truth, Mr. President, is that the opposition shifted focus away from targeted operations against gangs and gangs leaders and allowed them space to recoup. The number of gangs in the country increased from under 200 in 2010 to approximately 350 by 2016. And we saw their impact between 2015 and 2017. That is when this administration decided to take decisive action, Mr. President. We recognize the emergency threat that organized criminal enterprises and violence producers pose to specific communities and to the country generally. We responded with zones of special operations and state of public emergencies to halt the persistent spiral of murder between 2015 and 2017. These measures were successful in taking back communities from gangs, displacing criminals, disrupting their operations, and limiting their space and opportunity to commit crimes. The government has recognized violence as a national emergency, and as such, we have made the largest sustained investment in national security in Jamaica's history. In 2015, before this administration took office, capital expenditure for national security was $2.67 billion. By 2018, it was increased to $12.7 billion. And in 2019, we made a record $19.5 billion investment to modernize our security apparatus. Mr. President, this sustained increase in our first term was necessary to compensate for years of underinvestment. These funds have strengthened our security forces through investments in equipment, vehicles, intelligence, forensics technology, and advanced training in cybersecurity, cybercrime, counter-trafficking, and financial intelligence. We have enhanced the operational capacity of the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the Jamaica Defense Force, rearming them with modern tools to dismantle criminal networks. In the case of the JCF, we have invested in building one of the most advanced law enforcement agencies in this hemisphere. To this end, significant progress is being made on the development of a C5 center, a state-of-the-art command and control facility. This cutting-edge center will seamlessly integrate, coordinate, and analyze real-time data from all available sources, including CCTV, and body-worn cameras, supported by a robust back-end infrastructure. This development is a game changer for modern, efficient, and intelligence-driven policing and will have a major impact on crime. The government project ROC initiative, which was launched in 2019 to modernize the physical infrastructure of the JCF, has seen the refurbishment and construction of numerous police facilities across the island. Throughout the public sector compensation review, my government has ensured that our police officers are now in receipt of more reasonable salaries and pensions, befitting of their profession, and providing a better foundation for future negotiations. The resulting boost to morale cannot be overstated, and it has made a career in the JCF more appealing. Right. Mr. President, this administration in 2018 embarked on an ambitious plan to indigenously reform and recognize the Jamaican Constabulary Force under the direction of Commissioner Anthony Anderson. This included leadership development, recruitment and training of personnel, and the acquisition of material and advanced technology. It was never the intention of the government to rely solely on emergency measures. Rather, we used these measures to treat a crime situation that exceeded the existing capacity of regular law enforcement, while using the space created to build the long-term capacity of our security forces. By 2022, Mr. President, we began to see the impact of these reforms and investments. The improved intelligence gathering, better investigative and crime-solving capabilities, and a return to more targeted and focused strategies against gangs and violence producers. During this period, several gangs and their leaders were indicted and prosecuted using anti-gang legislation. However, Mr. President, we note that most illicit weapons which fuel gang violence enter Jamaica through formal ports of entry. To improve our ability to secure this channel, we have been investing in advanced scanners and enhanced security protocols at Jamaica Customs. And the result is evidenced by major gun finds at our ports in recent times. I would like to acknowledge the Jamaica Customs for their increased vigilance and commend the security forces and our partners for increased cooperation and intelligence sharing, which is yielding great results. Every weapon and ammunition kept off our streets is potentially a life saved. Additionally, we are finalizing the Customs Mutual Assistance Agreement with the United States, which will enable even greater intelligence sharing to strengthen port security and protect our national and economic interests. Mr. President, data and intelligence confirm that Jamaica's violence is driven by organized criminal enterprises. These we call gangs, not socio-economic factors like poverty or unemployment, as the opposition would like us to believe. More than 70% of murders in Jamaica are directly related to gangs. Today, we can say that year-to-date, murders are at their lowest level in 25 years. Had we had the full support of the opposition in the use of these emergency measures previously spoken about, the reduction in murders would have been even greater, Mr. President. Let me be clear. The People's National Party, under its current leadership, can take no credit for the reduction of murders in Jamaica. They have done everything possible to obstruct this government's efforts to fight crime. The figures, Mr. President, speak with unmistakable clarity, and they speak with force. The number of murders recorded in Jamaica declined from 1,147 in 2024 to 673 in 2025. Let that soak in, Mr. President. That is a 43% reduction in a single year. That is not marginal progress, not incremental change. That is a decisive break from the past. It is also the first time in 31 years that Jamaica's murder toll has fell below 700. And the momentum has not slowed, Mr. President. Indeed, it has strengthened. Between January 1 and March 14, 2026, murders declined by a further 29.4% compared to the same period last year. Mr. President, this is not a chance. This is not coincidence. This is the unmistakable outcome of sustained intelligence-led security operations, reinforced by deliberate legislative reform and the steady strengthening of our national security institutions. It is evident that Jamaica is no longer reacting to crime. We are systematically dismantling it. This progress has been enabled by strategic use of emergency measures, measures that created the time and space for our security forces to build capacity while simultaneously containing and reducing a growing threat. And today, Mr. President, the results are visible to every Jamaican. The capability of the state now exceeds that of organized criminal elements. Mr. President, the state must always hold the advantage, and we have ensured it does. We have invested in superior intelligence, strong communications, enhanced mobility, and advanced tactical capability. But let me be equally clear. Strength without principle is not security. We have insisted that these capabilities are exercised within the rule of law, with respect for human rights, compassion for victims, and protection for the most vulnerable among us. A critical pillar of this success has been the all-out assault on gangs, Mr. President, led by the Anti-Gang Task Force. Let us not romanticize or minimize that threat. Gangs are the main source of violent crime in Jamaica. They occupy communities, traffic narcotics, extort the vulnerable, and perpetrate violence without hesitation. Dismantling them is not merely a policing objective. It is a national security imperative. Mr. President, as we look ahead, we are not easing our efforts. We are expanding them. We heard through his contribution, the Prime Minister indicate that in the coming financial year, the Jamaica Defence Force will advance the establishment of the Camp Warika Forward Operating Base, spanning approximately 100 acres at an estimated cost of $5 billion. This is not just an infrastructure project. It is a strategic investment in territorial dominance, enhanced communication, and real-time sustainable awareness across the Ligani Plains. Mr. President, this budget represents something deeper than allocation. It represents transition. A transition from reactive crisis management to persistent readiness. From temporary suppression to sustained reduction. From fragmented oversight to full spectrum domain awareness. Mr. President, we must also confront a deeper truth. Gang violence, as grave as it is, represents only one dimension of the challenge. The other form of violence, quieter, often hidden, but equally destructive, domestic violence, child abuse, violence in our schools and institutions. These are not problems that can be solved by force alone. They are rooted in behavior, in culture, in long-standing social patterns, and they require a broader, more deliberate response. It is precisely this understanding that led this government to take the deliberate step of renaming the ministry as the Ministry of National Security and Peace. That change is not cosmetic, it is philosophical. It signals clearly that our mission is not only to suppress crime, but to actively build and sustain peace across our society. But because, Mr. President, true security is not merely the absence of violence, it is the presence of stability, dignity, and hope. And I can say without fear of contradiction that this is the Jamaica we are building. Yet even as we celebrate this progress, it would be remiss of me not to note that we are being confronted with a troubling and persistent reality. The alarming number of lives lost on our roads. It is deeply distressing to me that while we have managed to reduce certain forms of violence, road fatalities continue to climb. Far too many of our citizens claim, year after year. These are not just statistics, Mr. President. They are mothers, fathers, children, and friends whose lives are cut short, often due to preventable circumstances. We must now bring the same level of urgency, coordination, and national resolve to road safety as we have to crime fighting, because the loss of life in any form is a burden this country cannot afford to carry. Mr. President, we will continue to invest in the security forces and support the transformation of the Jamaica Constabulary Force into a modern, professional, and technology-driven organization. We will continue to target gangs, which account for over 70% of murders in this country. If we focus on eliminating gangs, we can reduce our murder rate to below the regional average of 15 per 100,000. I am pleased to learn that police intelligence now estimate that there are fewer than 100 active gangs in Jamaica since the beginning of 2025, down from a high of 350 in 2016. Many have been dismantled or have gone dormant, or they are laying low because they know they are being relentlessly pursued by our security forces. In closing, Mr. President, I wish to extend, on behalf of a grateful nation, my deepest appreciation to the men and women of our security forces. Your service is not ordinary. It is marked by courage, sacrifice, and an unyielding commitment to the safety of every Jamaican. You stand on the front lines, often unseen and too often unthanked, yet you remain resolute. I encourage you, do not relent, do not waver, do not lose heart. The work you are doing is bearing fruit. The progress we now witness across Jamaica is a direct reflection of your discipline, your professionalism, and your bravery. Know this, your country sees you, your country values you, your country depends on you. Stand with your duty, firm in your duty, uphold the honor of your service, and continue to press forward with integrity and purpose. For in your hands rests not only the enforcement of law, but the preservation of peace, the protection of life, and the securing of Jamaica's future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Tavares Finson.
Auntie.
You know you're getting old, Mr. President, when they start to call you auntie, but it's all right.
Auntie D.
What? Did you have company name? So, Mr. President...
You should not have highlighted that because I will recognize you as Senator Donna Scott Motley.
Mr. President, you know I always have a problem whenever I try to write anything down. So you'll forgive me. You'll forgive me if I appear very disorganized. I crave your indulgence, firstly, to, as leader who has been given the privilege of organizing my team, to say to the 5 recently appointed senators how deeply proud I am of their presentation. It is no accident that they have spoken early and spoken well. Mr. President, I am never long in speaking, and I can assure you that I'm very cognizant of the time and also the fact that a lot of what I have said has already been fully articulated by those on my side. But I want to say that in September, I had a shift in my appointment. And so I was given responsibility for foreign, regional, and diaspora affairs. And Mr. President, you know, when you get to look at life through different lens, you take a different view of everything. And so my view of the budget now is, as I listen, I say to myself, when this budget was being prepared, oil was $60 per barrel. It is now $100 per barrel and trending upwards. And I'm deeply concerned about the implications for our country, the implications for the budget, which has been so extolled. I do remember when we faced the international, the global financial meltdown. Minister Orly Shaw was then minister, and I recall that he said that Jamaica would not be at all impacted. And all I am cautioning is that even amidst the backslapping and the congratulations about this transformational budget, put together like a team to say what if. Because your supplementary estimates have to come earlier than usual. And you know, when I think about the increase of $1,000 in minimum wage, Senator Duncan, before it lands in their pockets, it's already eroded. Over the last 4 weeks, we have had increases every single week of $4.50 per liter on gas. And gas, you know, I drink a lot of water, you know, so I don't like them water joke there. I just want some of the $20 one to be sent to me. Senator Morgan is going to send me, oh, true, you always give me. But I want Senator Morgan to send me some of the $20 one. But the whole fact of the matter is that once gas is increased, everything is impacted. So the poor mother who is sending her child to school now has to consider how much more she's going to have to put on the lunch money. And the farmer has to think about his inputs. So the plummy tomatoes that we're getting now for $100 per pound, down from about $400, is going to be increased. When you get in your car, Senator Tomlinson, you have to now consider not yourself, No, indeed, some of us have more than others. But how will your patients reach you? What is it that they have? No, I'm sorry, Thompson. How will your patients reach you? What will they have to endure? And the MSLP programs, which we have been speaking about, and I'm grateful to those who have touched on it because that was an area of deep concern for me. They too will now face inflated costs because our electricity, the cost of our electricity, is one of the highest ever. And we have already been served notice by JPS that we are going to face an increase. These are perilous times. I pray every night. And I'm a praying woman. I pray every night that good judgment and sound reason will prevail and that this war will come to an end. Mr. President, I want to say a word about the NHT. There are those on my side who are deeply steeped in finance who can't understand when I get outraged and say, but the Prime Minister says National Housing Trust is a financial institution. And they kind of look at me like, duh. Well, it is. In fact, if it were being ranked with other tiers, it would be about the third largest financial institution. Its assets are stronger than the whole entire building society sector. It is a formidable institution. So why do I get upset that it's called a financial institution? In May 2022, that is how the Prime Minister described it. He says that there are some people who really want to think it is a charitable institution and want it to be dedicated to social housing. And when I recall that Michael Manley was impelled to do this because he said housing is not supposed to be a privilege for the few, but a right which everybody should enjoy. Then I say, if you're going to see through the lens of a financial institution, how are you going to meet that mandate? And you know what, Senator Morgan? So the whole system was changed, and now it's funded through the banks. I'm going to tell you about what happened to a client of mine. And she was really lucky that I was a lawyer. And she wasn't my client. I was a client for the vendor. And it's Maypen and Clarendon, so you kind of know everybody. And, you know, you understand there are relationships. So when she went to purchase a house, she was unemployed. And NHT was going to give her the loan. By the time she went back for the second interview, she was employed. So NHT sent her to the bank. The bank said, no, you can't qualify for this loan. So they sent her back to NHT. NHT sent her back to the bank. And in between, she had to pay for another valuation. You know how much valuation reports cost? And the agony, the perhaps unintended consequences which she had to endure were such she almost lost a house and lost all the valuation costs, the surveyor's identification report, agreement for sale costs, and so on. So you have to think things through when you are implementing a system. Let me look at my notes to tell you that in the past there was actually the observer, let me be clear, not the gleaner, the observer did an analysis of the NHT and found that in the past there would actually be an outspend on housing. Since 2023-24, contributions reached a record 56.6 billion, while housing expenditure fell to 30.2 billion. widening the gap between collections and housing deployments to its widest margin in more than a decade. I implore you to come up with creative ways in which you can deliver affordable housing. The Prime Minister listed a litany of woes, including, to my shock and amazement, one which spoke about the delay in approvals. And I remember when it was former Prime Minister Bruce Golding who had promised 90 days for approvals, and it still has not been done. When you talk about promises made and promises kept, let me tell you about one. I am standing in a parliament on Duke Street named Gordon House. It was promised that the new parliamentary building would have been started in 2020, 2021. And I'm still standing here. And I know that I'm going to hear a litany of excuses, but you will forgive me if, when I look at the lens of this budget, which you say is so transformational, which outlines a vision, that I lack trust. And a budget should create credibility and trust. But just at one example of where we are right here debating should make you pause and think. And finally, because I've promised that I will be brief, not because it is that I don't have more to say. No, it's not finally, Minister, because I have to talk to you about Melissa. There are two names which were called constantly throughout the debate, not by you, but we heard Melissa and Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. But Melissa, the recovery from Melissa, from your own ministry, there are still persons living in schools as shelters. And I can tell you, I was not pleased when Dr. Troop explained that there were family members, they were related to teachers, there were relatives of this body or that body, and that everybody knew the persons very closely. In fact, that made me more dismayed, because I couldn't understand why the government was allowing this. And then I asked myself, was this the same school that they were given December 31st to move with no arrangements made? And now we are in March, and they are still in shelters. They are actually, according to the statistics which were delivered by the ministry, Senator Fitz-Henley, by the ministry, there are 93 persons who are still in shelters. And the greatest amount was at Petersfield. I urge you, Minister, I implore you, I beseech you to give your attention to this. Children need a space in which they can learn. And it struck me that it was the police who raised the numbers about children who could not be located in St. Elizabeth. You see, they understand the connection between children not attending school and an increase in crime. They were actually wondering what had happened to these children, and no doubt wondering if they would end up in their custody. And Mr. President, you were not in the room when I spoke about my new responsibilities. So you will understand why I cannot overlook the issue of Cuba and the medical mission. I have heard the sneers about Cuba. I have heard the condemnation of socialism. But Cuba has never bombed anywhere. Cuba has never attempted to wage war. Cubans have been coming here for over 5 decades, and they have never attempted to impose their ideological beliefs on us. They have never attempted to impose, and be clear, Minister Hill, listen to me carefully, because I know about words. And when I use them, I understand what I'm saying. They have never imposed their ideological beliefs on us. Never. But here is a country that is being deprecated, a country where the government has supported a resolution to end the embargo. That's the irony. That's why I can't trust you all. Because every day you speak to all the things you do, and then in the next breath, you do something that completely contradicts it. It was in the House last year when Member Warmington chided Minister Terry Long for attempting to do that resolution in Spanish. Because the government was proudly, as they always do, calling for an end to the embargo. Yes, always, consistently. The Prime Minister mentioned it in his own budget debate. But this is a country, Cuba, where they have 99% literacy, where they have one of the best research programs, where they were able to develop COVID vaccine in the early years, and where all that they have done is try to help other countries through their medical missions. Now, the problem, as I see it, with the medical missions is that because the intention is to ensure the demise of the Cuban regime, the Cuban administration, this is hurting them politically, economically. What is oppression, Senator Sinclair? Is oppression seeing a No, we need to debate it, because it is not remote that we might have to face it. Because if democracy means that you can look at a country and decide you like it and you want it for yourself, then that is a dangerous path. If democracy means that you can dictate who the government, I'm just posing a scenario. I am just asking you what democracy is. And I'm asking you to contemplate. So, it's a year ago, exactly 1 year ago, March 27th, Marco Rubio visited Jamaica, exactly 1 year ago. On that occasion, the Prime Minister said that the Cuban program was in conformity with our labor laws. I breathe a sigh of relief because I know what the Cubans do for this country. I know that they serve in remote communities. I know that they do, even in the last week that they were here, because they were scheduled to leave on March 20, they extended their time and they did 20 eye surgeries per day. Now, in addition to doing all these eye surgeries, they provide critical cancer care. They also have a technical team that fixes their equipment, so there's never any downtime. And I will say that the Prime Minister said of the People's National Party, what would you do? I would ask of the Prime Minister, when you were negotiating this, when you were discussing it, did you negotiate a replacement for the Cubans who were going to leave? Did you decide that you were going to fill the vacuum? Because we're talking about March 2025, when obviously what was spoken was not what was being discussed. And so, if you don't negotiate a relief, if you're not getting something in return for giving up something, then I think you are a very poor negotiator. And I call you properly now, Senator Thompson. I do apologize. So I'd call him Tomlinson. So people are going to die. Because when this is what medical doctors have said. I have no understanding of it. When you're screened and diagnosed with an illness, but you can't get a date for life-saving surgery, the doctors themselves say this creates additional stress, which can be very dangerous for the patient. Well, you can't debate with me that people are going to go blind. Surely there's no room for that. So we are left with gaps in our healthcare system, ballooning costs in our healthcare system as we try to recruit from overseas, because we did not have courage. No courage. You know, I promise I'm not being short as I had promised, but I remember, and I'm not going to tell you the whole of it, but I remember when Winston Churchill made a poem famous. It was actually a poem written by Claude McKay. And it came to my mind many times. You know, when the Prime Minister spoke at the heads of government, I actually commended him on how he approached it. Let me be clear. I thought he had a difficult task. I thought he navigated it well. I thought, no, I did it in an interview. Come, Senator Morgan, you know me well. CVM. But let me tell you this. Let me tell you this. If you will just give me Claude McKay's poem, Senator Thompson. I don't know if you like poetry. I do. It says, if we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock of our cursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood will not be spent in vain. So even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. There is a place for principle, and people actually respect you when you demonstrate principle and integrity. When you are compliant and submissive and subservient, trust me, they will only take more advantage of you, because that is the psychology of human behavior. If it pleases you.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Scott Motley, yes. You quoted Churchill?
No, I quoted Churchill quoting Claude McKay.
McKay, okay.
Claude McKay was from
Yes,
Canada.
yes, I know. And he was from Clarendon.
James Hill.
Yes.
In James Hill.
I'm aware. Thank you, Senator Scott Motley. As we move into a new section, Senator Sinclair. Senator Sinclair, would you just light the next? Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President.
Just an inquiry. Just an inquiry. That school. You have anybody running over at the stadium this evening? Eh?
Question is which school? Mr. President, I stand in support of the bill before us entitled the Appropriations Bill 2026, which was passed in the Lower House last Tuesday. Following the processes required and the sterling presentations, Mr. President, from our Minister of Finance, the Honourable Favour Williams, and the Most Honourable Prime Minister, Dr. Andrew Michael Holness. Mr. President, public expectations from a national budget presentation revolve around economic stability, improved quality of life, fiscal accountability. And what the citizens want to appreciate, Mr. President, is how the government revenue is raised, because it's secured from their taxes, how it will be used to address financial pressures as well as long-term development. And the budget presentation of this administration, Mr. President, meets the criteria in every respect. Mr. President, the bill was passed in the other place in this context, where Jamaica experienced good things happening by virtue of the actions and decisions made by an administration that appreciates the benefits of fiscal responsibility. Arising from this administration's stewardship of the affairs of Jamaica, we were able to experience a stable rate of exchange, Mr. President, and contrary to what was said by my colleague across the floor, young Senator Tomlinson, where we sought to look through a particular lens, there are independent bodies outside of the jurisdiction of Jamaica that has given us high ratings, and I refer to Standard & Poor, Moody's, and Fitch. So we don't have to pay attention to what is said by those who look through a certain lens. Let us look on what international rating organizations speak about Jamaica. And they do give us high ratings, even on the passage of Melissa, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have experienced the lowest unemployment figures, 3.3%, lowest debt to GDP levels, and over the past 9 years, no new taxes, significant by this administration. Mr. President, this administration has taken the ship of Jamaica through two of the worst natural disasters ever experienced, namely COVID, and that is the worst worldwide pandemic for over a century, and hurricanes Beryl and Melissa. Two back-to-back storms, with the latter being the strongest hurricane ever to impact the region. Mr. President, to be able to produce this appropriations bill 2026 without overburdening Jamaicans with massive and oppressive taxes is testimony to the tremendous effort of the team led by our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Dr. Andrew Michael Holness. The many Jamaicans who have encountered have great appreciation and understanding that the revenue measures at this time, after experiencing so many consecutive years of no new taxes, that the revenue measures were unavoidable. I know in the Republic from where I come, Senator Bernard saw you at the Parliament in Montego Bay on one occasion. But you know that is a diverse crew of persons. Diverse crew. We are in the Republic, and that is our Parliament. Diverse. We have people from the P side, the J side, no side, Mr. President. But you know, when you listen to the average man in our Parliament, Mr. President, the man who we will describe in legal terms as the man on the Clapham omnibus, Mr. President, they have no issue with the budget that has been presented by this administration. Mr. President, the people of Jamaica recognize that but for Hurricane Beryl and Melissa and the impact they had on the forward momentum of this administration, that we would more probably than not, would have been seen another year of no new taxes. But as I said, it was unavoidable. So, President, the impact of those storms have, however, concretized in the minds of Jamaicans here and across the diaspora that this administration has ensured, and I will quote the words of our Prime Minister, Jamaica's resilience is not only social and emotional, it is institutional, fiscal, and economic. Mr. President, the resilience shown is much appreciated by Jamaicans in Western Jamaica, in the parishes most highly affected by Hurricane Melissa. And I speak of St. James, Trelawney, Hanover, Westmoreland, and St. Elizabeth. When we ventured out, Mr. President, on October 29, 2026, there was great concern. The damage coupled with the loss of life was significant. I have not come across anyone who in some way or the other did not feel the wrath of Hurricane Melissa. We all give thanks to God, for as the saying goes, it could have been worse. We say thanks to all the donors, local and international, who responded to assist. We recognize the first responders and agency representatives who went beyond the call of duty, even when they themselves were affected. Mr. President, we, however, have a greater appreciation of the benefits of having an administration which recognizes the importance of building resilience. We appreciate even more the need to have an administration which has discipline, which is courageous, and able to maintain good governance over the many budget cycles from 2016 in the face of harsh but clearly unsound criticism from an opposition which sought to gaslight Jamaicans with fanciful spending. Mr. President, our administration was and continues to be able to respond post-Melissa to build back the lives and restore communities. Things may not happen as fast as we would all like, but the signs are positive, Mr. President. This administration was able to provide a loan from its own account of US $150 million, which assisted greatly in the restoration of electricity. Mr. President, when we spoke to JPS representatives in our EOC, they told us that their infrastructure in Western Jamaica, especially the transmission lines that move power from St. James across the hills into other parishes, was literally destroyed. Mr. President, this loan that was provided has given us a report that up to 99% of electricity has now been restored across Western Jamaica. Mr. President, communities which suffered major infrastructure damage, the restoration process has started. Repairs to many of our roads, Mr. President, have started and are continuing. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security was able to distribute hundreds of thousands of care packages. And when you go back to the COVID era, where support had to be given through the various care programs, it signifies the importance of the resilience that we were able to build and be able to respond to Jamaicans who needed assistance at those critical junctures in their lives, and right now, as we have experienced, Minister. Mr. President, the Ministry of Labour and Social Security has currently allocated to thousands of Jamaicans over $8 billion to needy Jamaicans to repair their homes. And yes, while there are teething pains, corrective measures are being implemented to ease the burden on those people. This signifies, Mr. President, however, a need to have implemented, and we are building out the infrastructure for that, for the national identification system to be fully implemented. That will make distribution of social needs much easier without having to go through manual verifications as is presently being done to ensure that there is transparency and accountability in the program. So I want to encourage at this time all Jamaicans to ensure that they are on board with the national identification system. Mr. President, a critical question that comes up at this time, though, and I found it a bit disingenuous and disheartening on the part of the opposition. When the government set up a system to solicit from internationally donations that will assist Jamaicans, the opposition set up their own system. They put out an advertisement. In fact, they sought to divide persons in making their contributions. But the question has been asked, where is the money that was raised by the opposition? That is the question that needs to be answered by them. Mr. President, over a month ago, the leader of the opposition said that he would present an account to the nation. Well, we have gone several weeks, and we don't hear no more communication about that accountability that was promised by the leader of the opposition. And if they want us to trust them, even as an opposition, then they must do what they have committed to. And that cannot be a difficult task, Mr. President. That cannot be a difficult task. Mr. President, the National Housing Trust has responded post-Melissa in a significant way. They have given moratoriums on loans, and they have provided grants to persons to do roof repairs. Grants, not loans, Mr. President, but grants. While it's doing so, they continue to provide loans to qualified Jamaicans to carry through, and they also presently are undertaking returns of contributions that persons are entitled to. So when persons come here and go out in the public space and seek to say that the taking our drawdown of $11 billion in support of the budget is impacting what the NHT does, that obviously is not true. But then the persons who raise that must ask themselves, Mr. President, what happened when they did what they did without any money? The monies that were taken from the NHT to bail out someone in respect to outer money. And let me say this, that particular property is still burdening the public coffers. It is, because guess what? It is not generating revenue, but there is also a cost in providing security. So, Mr. President, this is what one writer said in relation to outer money. And I quote, "No one could have expected an entity so notably tasked would have found itself so mired in controversy." And I can take the controversy and make it into a slander. Right, Mr. President? So, persons are there, you're criticizing. But if the monies were not taken, Senator Duncan, then what would happen to the Jamaicans? We would burden them with more taxes? Would we be burdening the Jamaican people with more taxes? So, Mr. President, the criticism that we hear coming from across the floor, seeking to gaslight, I am saying and submitting in this chamber that it is not correct nor true. Mr. President, with my Western Jamaica bias, I and many others found excitement and hope in the presentation of our Prime Minister's commitment to resurgence and transformation. In the wake of Melissa, we must build for the future. There's a popular saying that one should never make a crisis go to waste. The Honourable Prime Minister captured it well when he said, and I quote, "The suffering of our Western parishes will not be a footnote in our national story. It will be the catalyst for our next great chapter." And that takes me into NARA, Mr. President. The creation of the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority will soon be a reality. The bill for its creation has been tabled by the Prime Minister. And again, I heard Senator Tomlinson criticizing, and I asked myself, has he even read the bill? Has he even read the bill to be making some of the comments that he made this morning? And he lifted up a prop. And I asked the question, he said, the big yellow book, all of the big yellow book, look pristine compared to the one that is in the possession of Senator Morgan that have dog ears. Because what it is saying to me is that Senator Morgan, Mr. President, has gone through the big yellow book. Obviously, Senator Thompson did not go through that book. And the presentation from our colleague, Senator Minister Tomlinson. Yes, Senator Tomlinson. But the presentation from our Minister of Education has put his comments totally to rest because she has outlined what is being done in this present budget in the area of education. So, President, the NARA is a critical step that will be taken in the building and positive transformation of many of our urban spaces in the West and other areas in Jamaica. Through the function of NARA, it is expected that there will be greater coordination, speed, efficiency, improved standards in major development projects, which will improve the quality of life of Jamaicans, build and transform communities, enhance productivity, and accelerate national development. You come back? All right. I have more for you. Don't worry yourself. Mr. President, specific to Western Jamaica parishes, it is expected that the NARA will play a significant role in the build-out of the new and improved Black River, the much-needed Hopewell, Sandy Bay, and Lucy bypass, the airport in Negril, the transformation of the Lucy Harbour, the revitalization of Montego Bay development. And Mr. President, in this building and transformation of the space in Western Jamaica, I highlight just those, but there are several others across Jamaica. Mr. President, this administration recognizes the cumbersome nature of our procurement and other development requirements. We have proven ourselves bold enough to take action where necessary to ease that burden. Our administration knows that development can go a far way in improving Jamaica's competitiveness, increase economic opportunities, resulting in increased and sustained revenues. The opposition, on the other hand, obviously, Mr. President, based on the comments that we have heard this morning, they do not understand that that is a critical part of ensuring we fast-track needy development. Mr. President, I remind the Senate that it was this Andrew Holness administration that passed legislation making the Montego Bay Perimeter Road a national project. And I was in the Senate, Senator Bernard, you knew, but the comments that came from across here, because that legislation sought to ease the procurement process. And you as a resident in St. James, you have seen the development taking place right before your eyes with a speed in massive infrastructure that is going to impact St. James significantly. And I will get through, don't worry. And other areas in Western Jamaica in a real way. You have seen it. They have started paving the road. We soon get to opening one more highway that will open great opportunities for development. And when it was that things were taking place in Kingston, Mr. President, in respect to Constant Spring Road, if you remember the comments that came from the opposition, and down by Portia Simpson Square, where they were improving Hagley Park Road, I believe it is. Mr. President, the comments that came from the opposition at that time was that they're going to lock down Kingston, don't do it. Ease off of the development process. But this administration was able to do those projects. And look at us now, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, as I said, the legislation that we're bringing in respect to the NARA will ease some of the challenges that we have. Mr. President, opposition Senator again, Cleveland Tomlinson, where it's about timelines, I respond to him in this way. Don't worry yourself, man. And you know, you made some comments about the youth. If you reflect back on the 1970s, you know, when your great conceptualizer said to Jamaicans, take one of the 5 flights a day and leave Jamaica. It sounds like the same commentary he comes with, because what I want to ask him, what did Senator Tomlinson say to those youths in encouraging them to improve themselves, take the advantage of what was being offered through our Ministry of Education. Now we are hearing that you can go up to heart. What do you call it? Level 5? Level 5, right? Right now it's level 4. But we're offering up to level 5 right now, Mr. President. For free. So we have a way of upskilling our people. Mr. President, we don't want for them to be taking one of the 5 flights per day to go away. But listen to this. What you did was to create a brain drain in Jamaica that we're struggling to recover from. That is what you offer to the Jamaican people. The opposition offered that. The great conceptualizer that they seek to praise, Michael Manley, offered Jamaicans to take flight to go foreign, improve foreign, Mr. President. And then those are the same people that we're asking to contribute to Jamaica. Mr. President, but in respect to the timeline issue, the bill has been tabled. So that step has been taken. And unless you take the first step, you will never complete the journey. So we have taken the first step. Mr. President, we are in the process of doing the interview for NARA's Chief Executive Officer, Mr. President. That is far advanced. 5 persons have already been shortlisted and are being evaluated. Mr. President, the chairman of a credible independent oversight committee, Professor Peter Blair Henry, has been identified. And what I found confusing on their side, Mr. President, today, is that one senator is supporting it and one senator is bashing the person who has been appointed. It looks like you're confused on that side. In respect, you don't understand what is happening, man. Mr. President, this administration, unlike others, we act. We don't just talk. The Montego Bay Perimeter Road, which I spoke about, languished through 18 years of PNP administration, Mr. President. We got it done because we are an action administration. Mr. President, Harmony Park in Montego Bay, that wonderful park, languished through the PNP administration. We got it done, Mr. President. $1.3 million spent in doing the Harmony Beach Park. Mr. President, I highlight briefly these 2 things coming from our administration. We may be useful. So guess what? You, the people of Jamaica, can trust this administration to act and to act in their benefit and with their interests at heart. And in respect to this development, again, in the affected parishes, announcement made in this budget, transfer tax has been reduced by 50% across the affected parishes. Very important. And when we reflect on a PNP administration, when transfer tax was 5%, Scott Motley, Senator, and we reduced it under Alisha to 4%, PNP increased it to 5%. And guess what happened? Guess what happened? Under Nigel Clark as Minister of Finance, we reduced transfer tax to 2%. That's right. Our administration is a tax reduction type of administration. When we compare what you did with $60 billion in new taxes in 3 or 4 years, you understand that you are a taxation government. And Mr. President, in recent times, 2 persons who sit in their lower house spoke about increasing taxes just before the election. That is what they're about. Yes, 2 persons over there spoke about increasing tax. We talk about reducing the burden of taxation on people. And we will look at the efficiency in the collection of what is here. And that is why we gave you 9 years of no new taxes. Mr. President, it was spoken about. The meeting yesterday to bring in the small and medium-sized businesses is something that is significant, allowing the persons to be able to participate in what is to come. That is how we take care of our people and improve business in Jamaica. Mr. President, I'm going to touch quickly on beach access in the last few minutes that I have. Alan, there's a hypocrisy on the part of the PNP in relation to beach access. A big hypocrisy. Mr. President, if you look on the policy that has been tabled by the Honorable Prime Minister, look on the first goal, which is stated on page 35. And I want the public to understand, the Beach Control Act is an act that was implemented by a PNP government. The amendment that they made to the Beach Control Act in 1973 was done under a PNP government. This administration, in tabling this policy and opening the discussion for greater beach access, Mr. President, that they are able to now jump on. The goal, number one, the goals of the beach access and management policy are, listen to this, establishment of effective institutional arrangements for the regulation and management of Bailey Beach. Nothing is wrong with that. But two, increase physical access to the use and use of the foreshore, the floor of the sea, and the water column above it by all stakeholders. Not just a few, all stakeholders. All stakeholders. But here the hypocrisy that I see coming from the PNP. Mr. President, there's an advertisement which is out in the public, where two persons who are in their lower house on the opposition bench doing a development. And part of the advertisement in that is that you will have access to a private beach. Not public access, you know. The people who purchase the multi-million-dollar property that they are selling will have access to a private beach. All right. Mr. President, in St. James, Rosal Beach, Damali Beach, Cornwall Beach was removed, not allowing public access by a PNP administration. And in respect to Cornwall Beach, the hypocrisy of it is that Cornwall Beach was given to the people of St. James by Michael Manley and taken away under Portia Simpson Miller and the attorney who presided over it. The attorney's firm that presided over it is that of the leader of the opposition, Mr. President. Hypocrisy on the part of the PNP. And guess what? Take it easy. My time running out. Mr. President, one of the members on that side, within their family, of which they are gaining a benefit from it, Mr. President, owns a beach property, but the gate to that property is closed. They operate it for commercial purpose, but the gate is closed. There is no public access to the foreshore through their property. If they want to get up and stand up and talk who it is, then they have the opportunity to do so. Mr. President, this party, this administration respects beach access. We will have more discussion on that on another time, Mr. President. I thank you very much. I support the appropriation bill.
Thank you, Senator Sinclair. Senator Sinclair, thank you very much. Senator Lambert Brown.
President, after that parochial presentation from the councillor from Mobile. I wish to bring us back to a moment where we can celebrate nationally. So I want to start, President, by congratulating the Reggae Boys on their victory last night. I think we should all applaud them. And let's hope that on Tuesday, they can win again. And for the second time, get to the World Cup. Democratic Republic of Congo, you don't know that? So we start there. Secondly, President, you and I hope that the College of Jamaica will prevail tomorrow. He's wearing purple. He's wearing purple.
1 minute.
But
One
he didn't
minute.
go to
One minute,
KC.
please. Senator Apka Fitz-Henley, the man is talking about Jamaica College. He will do so unhindered by any remark from yourself. Go ahead, please.
Worse when he's wearing purple. Worse when he's wearing a purple tie. So, Mr. President, let's start there. By looking to our sportsmen and women. And that allows me to also, from this floor, salute and thank the people and government of Cuba who built for us the G.C. Foster College. Because it is that college that has allowed us to proliferate sporting coaches throughout many different disciplines and make us a world power in athletics. The Cubans help us there, and they help us in other schools. They help us in health for many years. Misunderstood. President, I was happy when this Prime Minister and yourself attended the funeral of Fidel Castro, who survived 11 presidents of the United States who attempted to kill him, every single one of them. I will never forget, President, the Cubans who sought Jamaica's assistance to allow them to transit to Angola, to stop the apartheidists who wanted to overrun Angola, and then to attack the ANC in South Africa. The Cuban internationalist fighter. And Jamaica paid a price. We paid a price because Kissinger came here to say we should not allow the Cubans any support. So it's clear to me. Nelson Mandela. Nelson. Is he finished yet? Nelson Mandela, that great freedom fighter, his first international visit after coming out of prison and becoming president was to Cuba, because Cuba has been a shining light of internationalism.
What has Jamaica been? About Jamaica. I'm in the Parliament of Jamaica.
I have all the time, you know. Because imbeciles like Marlon doesn't understand history. Doesn't understand history. And so I want from this Parliament to thank our Cuban brothers and sisters for their internationalism and their support. Mr. President, you're right, and I hear the minister commending the teachers for staying. President, at my stage and age, I can claim to be the one person in this chamber who have heard the most budget presentations in the country. You have been out of the country a little bit studying. So I can claim she also was out. Perfect. So I have been here, and I can say without fear of contradiction that between 62 and now, I have heard the most budget presentation. It's a huge thing. I show respect for it. And what it tells me is that much of the speeches I'm hearing here today, I've heard them before. There's nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9. That's what it says. There's nothing new under the sun. No, I've heard it, but you haven't heard my one. So you need to hear my one now. So, Mr. President, I've heard great announcements. I heard great re-announcements. I've even heard greater re-announcements. So let's take some. For many months, for years, in the lobby of this parliament, was a miniature presentation of the new parliament. That's fine. I'm not sure you will be either. But, President, as I said to the then chairman of the UDC, Senator Ransford Braham, that I don't expect that parliament, which was announced, for which groundbreaking took place. I think there's groundbreaking. But there's announcement after announcement. And that new parliament is again being re-announced. So it doesn't scare me about all of these announcements and grand announcements. Mr. President, I've heard and debated in this House needs. And who needs is going to do this and do that. All know I can't find it. But pardon me, Chairman, the toxicity of Marland can only be matched by the comments of Andre Stevens. I leave it to Andre. Yes, I leave it to Andre. So let me be clear. These announcements are just that. Most of them will never ever come to fruition under this government. Let's take, for example, this year, 2026. It is the 10th anniversary of some great announcements. And this is what this is 10? This is what Nigel Clark and the Prime Minister did. 5 in 4. 5 in 4. This is the 10th year of the announcement of 5 in 4. And so if it is 10 years, it is 2 times 5. But we don't have a 2% growth in a single year of those 10 years. In fact, as Senator Anderson pointed out, our average growth has been less than 1% per annum. 5 in 4. 10 years. 10 years. 2 times 5. And you can't even grow the economy 2%. So these announcements you're coming with in this budget leave the people of Jamaica with a lot of doubts. They know it's just a scam and a sham announcement. The proof of the pudding is in the doing. Minister of Education has come here, and I heard her praise up the Morant Bay Urban Center. And Minister, the sewer arrangement is not even in place. It's been fixed. But at the time of the announcement and the ribbon cutting, the point I'm making here is that you're good at making these announcements. But dealing with it is a problem. So when I listen to these presentations from the government, I got the impression that the budget was about two people. One, Andrew Holness. And if you go to Ansad, the amount of time his name was called. So the budget's about Andrew Holness. Second person is about a girl named Melissa. That's what this budget debate in the Senate this morning has been about. Melissa, blame Melissa, praise Andrew. Two persons. That's all. Blame Melissa, praise Andrew. Mr. President, my name was called a lot. Mr. President, let me address very quickly. Let me deal very quickly with the issue of salary and productivity. Because Senator Duncan, I love and promote productivity. I am on record of signing an agreement with backside company called. I never did, but you don't know nothing about it. I never did, but I'm ignoring you. I signed an agreement called Salary and Wages Improvement, Productivity Earned, SWIPE. That's nice. I am even more ashamed of you for your ignorance. So, President, I stand for productivity. I tell you a story. A couple of years ago, at the Ministry of Finance, and Senator Gale might have been in that meeting, Nigel Clark, the minister, spoke about productivity-related wages. Because a long time that discussion has been going on. I said to Nigel, my friend then, and still is, I said, Minister, can you show me one country anywhere in the world where productivity-related pay in the public sector has been operated? So we can look at that model. Oh no, we can't get that. And there's a reason. And there's a reason. Because it is easier to talk about productivity-related pay than to implement it. How do you, Minister, for the student? Minister, I'm talking to you now. How do you measure your teachers who have gotten the students who are lowest in the GSAT, as against those who are teaching the high performance from your alma mater? Different measurements. And these are some of the difficulties we face when we talk about productivity-related pay. For example, if you want to talk about crime reduction, shouldn't you be paying the police much, much more now for their success in reducing crime? But your proposal to them is 2%. So murder don't 40%. But your proposal to them is 2%, the same as the other person who does not achieve any productivity gain. So it's a difficult subject, easier for the Prime Minister to talk about. Let's talk a little about productivity, Senator Duncan. Well, you said the drill never exists. It's not a drill, you said. Senator Duncan, take a case of a man named Howard Gow, employed to the Ministry of Health, left the job in 2022. And today, sent me a text today, Senator Thompson still can't get him gratuity after 4 years.
That's the wrong person. Why would you take someone else?
You shouldn't have to text anybody. The system should.
You don't want to know. I thought you wanted to help. You don't want to know. He has texted everybody in our ministry. And he has now come to me to assist him. That's why he's texting me. And I am making progress against the bureaucracy that is not getting things done. You spoke about your business people, you know. So let me do my talking now. Let's talk, it don't matter how much I have. Let's talk about productivity. Mr. President, because those who want to preach productivity must set productivity as an example. 12th of September, I signed an agreement, and I think Senator Gale signed it. 12th of September 2024 with the Honorable Nigel Clark. And that agreement says that the unions would by November of 2024 submit their wage claims and complete negotiation by March 25. The unions complied. We submitted our claims. Senator Duncan, up to now, the negotiation that was to be completed by the 31st of March 2025 is still not completed. And the workers in the public sector who are to get their salary increase from last year still have not received it. And the reason for that is a total failing of the Ministry of Finance. It's about the leadership of finance. It is leadership of companies that will gain you productivity. And when our government speaks of lack of productivity, they are admitting a lack of leadership on their part. And so I speak to that. That if you want productivity, the unions have already committed to work with you productively. It is the government who is failing. And that is why the Prime Minister can get up in the Parliament and make big talk. And that's why I say talk is talk. Real action comes when leadership set out to do what is necessary. So I want to make it very clear that the public sector workers are deserving of an increase. And I call upon the Minister of Finance to fast-track the negotiation that should have been completed from the first quarter of 2025. Second thing I want to say in respect to that, there are many workers in the public sector who have benefited from the compensation review done in agreement with the unions from 2015 when Peter Phillips signed on for it. But there are workers at the University of the West Indies, and I'm calling on the Ministry of Finance to resolve the compensation issues at the University Hospital for the lecturers, Senator Tim, right down to the janitors. And I want to make one other plea that I hope will get attraction here. And it is this. Apart from the University of the West Indies, all other public sector workers have benefited from the compensation review. Today, Senator Gale said MPs, councillors. But I want today to make a plea on behalf of the 16 non-executive senators. I don't care what is the reason, but I believe, and I'm making a call to the minister, as a trade unionist, as a senator, and this is not a party call, that the non-executive senators are the only ones in the parliament who have not benefited from the compensation review. And I'm making a call for the letter of September 2023. For the letter, you getting what? 20 how much million is your pay? 20 how much is your pay? So I am saying here that the 16 non-executive senators, some who have left too, that the principle of 2008, which was contained in the letter from the Financial Secretary to the Clerk of Parliament in 2023, should be resent from Finance, so that the senators, the non-executive senators, which would include Marlon Morgan and Akwa Fitzenley, when they were not in the executive, to receive an adjustment. And I make that plea, President, knowing that the issue is sensitive. But the reality is, the work of the senators, my friend Senator Sinclair travels from Montego Bay. Senator Bernard travels from Mobile. Yesterday, we're told electricity rate going up. Transportation costs going up. It's only fair that the non-executive senators should have the adjustment which was proposed. Did I hear my friend in the back say she agreed? Good. So, President, as I wrap up in the next few minutes, I want to say that the workers in the public sector who receive duty concession, that the $1.4 billion that the government intends to receive in taxes is not worth squeezing the public sector workers. I'm calling on the government to reinstate the position prior to this budget. I'm calling on the government to reinstate 1.4, President, in the context of a 1.3, 1.4 trillion budget, is truly chicken feed. That's what they found last year to buy the old school bus. Why squeeze the public sector workers? Why deprive them of the full benefit? And so, my call is a restoration. My call is for a restoration of the school bus, of the duty concession to the public sector workers. Because, Mr. President, if the budget is about people, which it ought to be, then this budget hasn't really connected with the people. The minimum wage workers expected, based on what you did said to them, your manifesto. You prefer me point on you? No, but you are not important. You are not important. She is. And she understands that my point at her is not meant to be hostile. You understand that, Minister? 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 the minimum wage minister, for every increase, the government takes education tax. But your manifesto, I promise that this year, the minimum wage will go to 18,500 per week. And we're going to blame Melissa now for this paltry $25 an hour increase. What can $25 buy? What it can buy? So I am again asking the cabinet to honor your election promise. You start out, Minister, and said, oh, there was the 3rd of September. Yes, there were. There was the 3rd of September. But you know what happened on the 3rd of September? Your side lost 14 seats. And my side gained 14 seats. And so my side. So we also revel in the outcome of the elections. We know that is not a... That's fine, you lost it for 4 terms. So as far as we are concerned, this budget let down the minimum wage workers, broken promise. It let down the public sector workers, broken promise. It is not a budget for the people of the country. It's a budget for you to praise the announcement and re-announcement and re-announcement. The people of Jamaica deserves better. For the first time, we have now gotten over the charade of no new taxes. You have had to tax the Jamaican people at the worst time in our history. That, in my view, represents a government that is wicked and uncaring. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. One minute, Senator. 1 minute.
He's going to be talking twice in the debate. He has talked an entire debate thus far.
Engage your microphone, please, Senator Morgan.
When it's nice, you have to do it twice. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, for us on this side, the appropriation bill being debated is about delivering solutions to the challenges confronting the Jamaican people. It is about focusing keenly on improving the quality of life and securing the livelihood of the Jamaican people in what is a difficult and trying post-Hurricane Melissa dispensation. This appropriation bill is the mechanism through which the Jamaica Labour Party government's master plan for our recovery and restoration is being operationalized. Led by the Builder-in-Chief, our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, we are rolling out the blueprint and presenting the roadmap on this, our journey from resilience to resurgence. We recognize that for the PNP members, this debate is about political grandstanding, revolutionist history, and vulgar opportunism. Literally exploiting, as we just heard a while ago, the vulnerability, hardship, and dislocation bedeviling our people as a result of the devastation Hurricane Melissa left in her wake. But I have news for them, Mr. President. Where the PNP sees crisis, we in the governing Jamaica Labour Party see opportunity. Where they whine and complain, we inspire hope and creativity. They find a problem for every solution. We find the solutions to our nation's problem. Where they preach doom and gloom, we preach positivity and point people to opportunities, helping them move from resilience to resurgence. And, Mr. President, as the Prime Minister said elsewhere, while they on that side only talk nonsense in many instances, we on this side get things done. We get things done, Mr. President, by moving the minimum wage from the $5,600 it stood at under the PNP to the $17,000 it will stand at come July 2026. We get things done by presenting 10 consecutive budgets with no net new taxes. We get things done by reducing unemployment from just over 13% under the PNP to the 3.3% it stands at today. We get things done by reducing poverty from the 21.2% it stood at under the PNP in 2015 to the 7.8 record low it stands at present per the last survey of living conditions. Previously, poverty stood at 8.2% per the 2023 survey. And of course, Mr. President, youth unemployment under them was in the order of 30%, and under us at present, it's in the order of 10%, Mr. President. While we get things done by abolishing the Students' Loan Bureau guarantor requirement, we are making the aspiration of attaining higher education a reality for Jamaicans from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. We get things done, Mr. President, by delivering on compensation review, providing public sector workers with the largest salary increases they have ever received in this country. We get things done by providing a rural school bus system which offers a cheaper, safer, and more reliable mode of transportation to our children in rural Jamaica, whether they want to describe them as old buses or not. We get things done by bringing more arable land into agricultural production and significantly increasing the acreage of irrigated agricultural lands. We get things done by rehabilitating the largest number of farm roads and establishing the long-desired cold storage facilities at Kirkvine in Manchester and Essex Valley over in St. Elizabeth. We get things done, Mr. President, by increasing NHT low-income home grants, facilitating home improvement, increasing the NHT low ceiling time and again, building communities, delivering thousands of housing solutions, and lowering NHT interest rates. There's a 0% interest rate for the lowest income earners in this country, Mr. President, under this government. That is the difference between us on this side and them on that side. We get things done for the poor and vulnerable in this country, increasing PATH payments, providing a social pension for persons aged 75 and older, increasing NIS pensions, modernizing the life certification process via the AmAlive app, which Minister Morris Dixon would have pioneered in her previous incarnation. And of course, we have delivered over 300 concrete housing solutions with inside bathroom facilities to the poor and needy in this country under the new social housing program. And of course, we have been improving the state of infirmaries, and we have established drop-in centers. In addition to the recently announced government procurement set aside for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, we get things done by instituting reforms to make it easier for MSMEs to access much-needed equity financing and lower-cost capital for business expansion and retooling. I speak here, Mr. President, of the DBJ, the reforms that have been announced vis-à-vis pension funds, and, of course, insurance funds. And most importantly, Mr. President, we on this side get things done by bringing crime down to a 30-year low of less than 700 murders in calendar year 2025. And as you can appreciate, we are on course to go even lower this year perhaps below the 500 mark here in calendar year 2026. Mr. President, the members opposite want to put the government in a quagmire by imperiling revenue outturn and throwing our nation's fiscal program off track. That's the only thing one can conclude when one considers the ramifications of some of the proposals they advanced during the budget debate and even throughout today during this debate on the appropriation bill before us. The opposition PNP approached the budget debate and are approaching today's appropriation bill debate with a pre-Hurricane Melissa posture. I was at pains to point that out to all the members opposite Sotavoshe throughout the course of today. How can the raft of hairy-fairy election promises in a pre-Hurricane Melissa dispensation be copied and pasted in this dispensation and presented as so-called policy proposals? As out of touch and outdated as the opposition PNP is on the question of cooperation in healthcare between Jamaica and Cuba, as well as the issue of transportation for rural school children, the PNP is outdated and out of touch on the matter of our nation's finances. As Finance Minister Favour Williams exposed in her rebuttal as she closed the budget debate this past Tuesday, the electronic invoicing and digital nomads policy suggestions for revenue generation would not and cannot materialize anytime soon. The PNP wants the government to give up its credible and sustainable revenue generation program for their tenuous, impractical, poorly thought out, and unsustainable revenue-raising suggestions. Imagine, Mr. President, they are in opposition. They should be studied. They should be undertaking copious research and consulting, if needs be, with sober and measured, competent professionals. Yet they come to these debates exhibiting chaka-chaka policy formulation and chaka-chaka workmanship. I urge you, my fellow Jamaicans, take sleep and mark that. Chaka-chaka workmanship as opposition leads to chaka-chaka workmanship as government, and we cannot afford to let that happen. Mr. President, what we saw and heard from Julian Robinson and Mark Golding during the budget debate render them unsuitable to hold the reins of responsibility as Finance Minister and Prime Minister, respectively, in this country. They are simply not suited. A chaka-chaka government like that which would be formed by the PNP would destroy our economy and reverse the gains the Jamaican people individually and collectively have worked so hard and have sacrificed so much to attain. Other observers, Mr. President, seem to be of the same view. Speaking on a post-budget panel during Nationwide News Network's cover story this past Tuesday, respected development economist Dr. Christian Stokes said the following, and I quote, "The moment that Mr. Robinson made his budget presentation, he left his, to use a boxing metaphor, he left his chin exposed because a credible case could not be made that those revenue initiatives could be done in time for April 1st. The noted development economist, Dr. Christian Stokes, basically went on to describe the Finance Minister's rebuttal of Julian Robinson as, quote, detailed, justified, and well done, end quote. He went on to posit, and I'm quoting again, "We went through a budget debate, and frankly, the proposals made by the opposition in how they would finance the budget were really not realistic." And on me says so, Mr. President, Dr. Christian Stokes says so. It is simply not credible to be proposing to do so much in terms of expenditure and fancy proposals, while at the same time asserting that you would not go the route of new taxes and you would not discontinue the $11.4 billion drawdown from the NHT, Mr. President. Time come, Mr. President, for the PNP to stop fooling up the Jamaican people. Time come for the PNP to stop giving the Jamaican people a 6 for a 9. What we heard during the budget debate from opposition leader Mark Golding and his spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson, and no doubt what we heard throughout the course of today in this debate on the appropriation bill from the PNP senators is so-so voodoo-type economics. As Finance Minister Favour Williams said on Tuesday, Mr. President, their maths is simply not mathsing. Mr. President, the opposition PNP would have us believe that they are sincere in their pontification and exhortations regarding the dislocation and hardship confronting many of our Jamaican brothers and sisters, especially those domiciled in Western Jamaica. During the budget debate, the point was made about displaced people sleeping in cars. Indeed, during his contribution to the debate, Julian Robinson shared with us the plight of Miss Margaret in Savannah Lamar, whose shop, he said, was destroyed by Hurricane Melissa, and James in Montego Bay, who he said runs a small transport business and suffered tremendous loss as a result of Hurricane Melissa-related damage to his vehicle. Mr. President, the Jamaican people will recall that at a time, as Senator Sinclair said just now, when every Jamaican should have been standing in one accord, demonstrating solidarity with the country's centralized and streamlined efforts to mobilize post-Hurricane Melissa relief support and raise funds via the Support Jamaica platform, the opposition PNP went about setting up their own fundraising platform, a parallel and competing portal dubbed, quote, PNP Hurricane Melissa Relief, end quote. In a rank and vulgar exhibition of party considerations over country, the opposition PNP, Mr. President, and its supporters have invariably diverted support that could otherwise have gone to Jamaica in terms of the Support Jamaica platform to their own platform, which was a party-related initiative. Now, the question is, since the opposition PNP is so keen on telling us about people sleeping in cars and enduring considerable hardship as a result of Hurricane Melissa, how much of the money raised by the PNP's Hurricane Melissa Relief Fund have they given in humanitarian aid to the people sleeping in the cars? How much of the money raised by the PNP has Julian Robinson and Mark Golding made available to Miss Margaret from Savannah Lamar or James from Montego Bay? I urge the people of Jamaica, Mr. President, to take sleep and mark death. Mr. President, the difference between us on this side and the members on that side is that we on this side put our money where our mouth is. They are talk, we are substance. Our genuine care and concern are borne out, Mr. President, by the Hurricane Melissa relief and recovery interventions we have rolled out, both from a state-funded government standpoint and from our personal resources, including the millions donated by Senators Abka Fitz-Henley and Christian Tavares Finson, which Senator Lambert Brown seems to have sleepless nights over. Mr. President, it would be remiss of me to contribute to this debate and not bring a most profound point into sharp focus. I want to implore my Jamaican brothers and sisters looking on, if you take nothing else away from this debate and the entire budget process, if you, the people of Jamaica, remember nothing else from this debate and the entire budget process, I want you to remember this. Whatever the PNP says about the state of the economy and the state of our beloved country, whatever negative picture they paint and would have you believe, best believe that in their personal life and private business affairs, they are having it otherwise. When them say nothing in Agwan, Mr. President, when them say nothing in Agwan, they are misleading you because big things are going on for enough of them in their personal life and personal business affairs. PNP officials, especially the top and hardest ones, tell their supporters one thing while they do another. They tell their supporters that times are hard, things are tough, and nothing are going on, while they are all about the place, Mr. President, investing, pursuing business opportunities, and making money like they have never made money before. I am here this afternoon, Mr. President, to expose their hypocrisy and mash down their lie. Mr. President, it is simply cruel and demonstrably unconscionable, Mr. President, to draw the wool over people's eyes, especially their indoctrinated and misguided PNP supporters. They dumb down their own supporters and blind them while their own eyes remain open. The eyes of the PNP officials are wide open as they go about the place buying up land, they develop land, they get into real estate, they acquire heavy equipment for construction, and they get into agriculture, including hydroponic farming, like their General Secretary, rearing goat, like Damian Crawford, and such the like. It is only in this debate that we saw the rank hypocrisy on display. The member opposite, who waxed warm on the question of beach access, was revealed as being associated with a household that owns a private beach. What kind of hypocrisy is that? Mr. President, PNP President and Opposition Leader Mark Golding stands on a soapbox regarding beach access, yet he, PNP President and Opposition Leader Mark Golding, say Marky G, stands on a soapbox regarding beach access, yet he is reportedly associated with a company, a project that is offering beachfront real estate for sale. Such hypocrisy. Mr. President, the PNP is a classic case of the hand of Esau and the voice of Jacob. They are inherently tricksters. It was Damian Crawford, Mr. Tricks You himself, who publicly confirmed that some years ago, their ostensible next leader. Mr. President, they tell the people one thing while they do another. And that is why the Prime Minister, Mr. President, felt compelled to highlight the PNP's hypocrisy during the budget debate, revealing that one PNP MP called and urged him to ignore the utterances of their embattled General Secretary Dayton Campbell, who was opposing the salary increase, citing that they could not survive without it. The Prime Minister also exposed the PNP MPs. The Prime Minister also exposed that the PNP MPs were the first ones calling into the Parliament, Mr. President, for a calculation as to their retroactive salary. Imagine that. The opposition PNP often characterize our economy as low growth, low tech, low wage. Isn't it contradictory, therefore, Mr. President, that they scoff at and ridicule our thrust to systematically lift the minimum wage over this 5-year policy cycle? Our undertaking is to move the minimum wage ultimately to 32,000 Jamaican dollars. It should be noted, Mr. President, that increased capital allowance, the liberalization of capital, as I mentioned earlier, pension funds and insurance funds, curricular development, and workforce training emphasizing STEM, as well as strategic partnerships such as those forged with India and manifest in the work of the Amber Group, for example, are encouraging developments vis-a-vis increased incorporation and mainstreaming of the ingredients where tech is support. Those are the things that will move us further along the value chain and ensure that Jamaica secures more exponential levels of growth. Mr. President, What I like about this 2026-2027 budget and the appropriation bill that gives effect to it is the degree to which it addresses many of the long-standing inhibitors and binding constraints on growth. We heard from the Finance Minister a well-thought-out suite of measures that will free up capital to the productive sector and other businesses. So the opposition often lament and likes to ask, where is the growth going to come from? Well, they have yet another answer, Mr. President. No lesser person than the Prime Minister himself also brought the growth imperative into sharp focus, underscoring NARA, underscoring FAST, and how those principal mechanisms will serve to accelerate our rates of growth. Mr. President, both Julian Robinson and Mark Golding brought the issue of tax compliance into sharp focus during the budget debate as part of their no new tax, no NHT drawdown advocacy vis-à-vis raising much-needed revenue to finance the 2026-2027 budget. Go after the tax dodgers and those who are not compliant, they said. The money is there to be collected. Go and collect it, they said. The next few minutes must be used to lay bare, Mr. President, the PNP's rank hypocrisy and insincerity on the matter of tax compliance and revenue protection. It was only recently that a performance audit report from the Auditor General on Procurement at the University Hospital of the West Indies, UHWI, revealed repugnant and despicable procurement practices which had the effect of the consolidated fund, our public purse, being deprived of much-needed revenue in favor of private companies. The UHWI's tax-exempt status, Mr. President, was utilized in favor of private entities, as reported by the Auditor General, for the acquisition of medical equipment and other supplies. At the center, we'll answer the question now, Maji. At the center of the tax fraud saga is a company identified by a media house that is the bane of the PNP's existence, as being owned and operated by senior PNP official and first-term Member of Parliament, Mr. Dennis Gordon, with the entity being the Jack Den Group of companies. Mr. President, what can go so? It would interest Julian Robinson, Mark Golding, and the other PNP members to know that, like charity, tax compliance and revenue protection begins at home. Start with the people in the mirror. As they sought to extract political mileage from the Auditor General report regarding UHWI procurement, the opposition PNP convened a press conference on January 29, 2026. Little did they know that the media was on top of their hypocrisy and had a leadership interrogation imperative, because while the PNP sought to focus attention on the reported procurement issues at the UHWI, the media focused attention on Mark Golding's actions, or should I say, lack thereof, given the hat he wears. And I'm not referring to the anti-badman cap the Prime Minister gifted him last week. I am referring to his position as PNP President and opposition leader vis-à-vis Dennis Gordon's position as his subordinate and one of the persons reportedly embroiled in the UHWI scandal. Can you imagine, Mr. President, even in opposition, the PNP find their way embroiled in scandals? So they have not only had the Manchester Municipal Corporation scandal, they have not only had the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation scandal, they have had the KSAMC hush money scandal, and they have now added the reported Dennis Gordon, Jack Den Group of companies, tax fraud scandal to their list of scandals, even while in opposition.
1 minute, 1 minute. Senator Brown.
I dare you
Senator
to come
Brown.
and force me to sit.
Senator Brown, come
You're
down.
a coward.
Senator Brown, come down.
Yeah. I rise on a point of order. But if that little imbecile is telling me to sit,
Come down. No, it's
I
okay.
want him to come and make me sit.
Come.
That's unparliamentary, Lamy. I can't say that. I can't say
So,
that.
President,
He needs to withdraw that language and description of
that
the
the
member.
imbecile, that's what you want me to withdraw?
You cannot describe the
You want
member
me
like
to
that.
withdraw the imbecile?
Mr. President,
All right.
Mr.
I
President,
withdraw the imbecile. If Abka Fitzenley want me to sit, tell him to come and force it.
Go ahead. What's the point of
Thank
order?
Under the standing order, we are not to make improper motive about members of this chamber or the other chamber. The comments about MP Gordon, may I be allowed to make my point of order in sense? It violates that standing order. And as much as I am prepared to withdraw the imbecile comment, then he should also withdraw the improper motive for which he's put. So let me make it clear, President. The only person who can get me to sit is the marshal. Not some loudmouth, bagger, two-mouthed boy from Nationwide.
Senator Brown, control yourself. All right, so hear this now. Hear this now. In order to have a certain amount of equanimity and fairness, if I were to rule that anything said in relation to the member of the lower house was offensive to the standing orders, it would really fly in the face of some of the most disgusting things that many persons on your side have said about the Honorable Prime Minister in this country. Right in this chamber. Over the time, the most disgusting things. So what I'm going to do is just ask Senator Morgan. He has made his point, just to move on.
Mr. President, what was intended to be a political point-scoring UHWI press conference backfired immensely on the PNP. It was a complete train wreck, not dissimilar to how history will record that now infamous Jeffrey Epstein-related Newsnight interview between Emily Maitlis of the then BBC, of the BBC at the time, and the then Prince Andrew of the United Kingdom. Like the then Prince Andrew of the UK, Mark Golding bobbed and weaved as he struggled to respond to the questions being put to him by the probing and incisive members of the media who were in attendance. Mr. President, in the face of very damning, credible and compelling evidence against Dennis Gordon, insofar as his Jack Den group of companies, PNP President and Opposition Leader Mark Golding
there's not even a court case. And the member is making remarks about a member in the other house that is disparaging, that is contrary to the standing order.
We have an auditor
and
general
above all, much of what he's saying is untrue. Is conducting a scurrilous campaign, and the Senate deserves better. So, my point of order is that he's violating the improper motive and making disparaging remarks in respect.
The President ruled a while ago.
And I'm making it again because you have repeated it. He has not moved on. And you all must do better. You must all do better.
He was summarizing.
Senator Morgan, your time is running out, you know, and every time I'm not adding on any time, you know, so you need to just do what you're doing.
Mr. President. Mr. President, the PNP President and Opposition Leader has not taken action against the referenced member in respect of his parliamentary assignments. Let the records show, Mr. President, that again, we on this side are calling for the immediate removal of Mr. Dennis Gordon from Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, PAC, by Opposition Leader Mark Golding. You cannot be auditioning for the highest elected office in the land and be found wanting every time these tests of leadership and issues of moral turpitude arise. To Mr. Mark Golding, I say, sir, your purported commitment to integrity in public life and your call for increased tax compliance ring hollow. Indeed, they are undermined by your failure to act against the referenced member. Mr. President, the financial sector collapse of the 1990s, which many persons have come to refer to loosely as the Finsac debacle, is the PNP's most egregious transgression against the Jamaican people. The PNP is acutely aware that it is so, and they are absolutely embarrassed by it. It is not surprising in this context, Mr. President, to note the coordinated and concerted effort at revisionist history throughout the budget debate by PNP officials and their surrogates across traditional and social media. But, Mr. President, you know we are in the business of setting the record straight and mashing down the PNP's lies. The opposition PNP has sought to suggest that it was merely reckless and imprudent action on the part of bankers that caused the collapse of the financial sector in the 1990s. They are so barefaced, brazen, and revisionist as to try and paint Finsac as a good thing, the solution to the problem they posit. History, however, records that business operators and debtors were not afforded an opportunity to avert loss of their assets, which, in many instances, were made available to others for cents in the dollar, but they were denied the opportunity. They may seek to distort the facts and revise history as much as they want, but let it be known unequivocally that it was policy failure, the poor decisions of the then PNP government, exacerbated, of course, by imprudent financial sector operations, which resulted in the collapse of the financial system and the decimation of our productive sector. I use the word imprudent. Go and check with your ENT. In short, Mr. President, it was the then PNP government's premature liberalization of the foreign exchange market and the unsustainable and ill-advised high interest rate policy that primarily led to the financial sector collapse of the 1990s.
Senator Morgan,
just a minute,
that's
Mr.
you.
President. Just a minute left.
What you call a minute? That's you, you know.
That's the time allowed for stoppage, Mr. President.
Yeah, stop
a minute
the
and a half, 90 seconds.
What?
90 seconds, Mr. President.
We're on 90 seconds on the clock, Mr.
In their coordinated and preemptive bid to take the sting out of the wretched and incontrovertible historical transgression, Finsac, the PNP has set about deflecting and hoodwinking the Jamaican people, both inside and outside of the Parliament. Release the Finsac report is their cry. Release the Finsac report is their refrain. However, Auntie Donna just said yes, but watch me now. This past Monday, Mr. President, the 23rd of March 2026, the election-scarred PNP President and Opposition Leader Mark Golding appeared on a YouTube program where he was interviewed by one of their social media operatives. The question was put to Mr. Mark Golding as to whether he would release the Finsac Commission of Inquiry report if he were elected Prime Minister of Jamaica following the next general elections. Mr. President, this was Mark Golding's response, and I quote, "The Finsac situation is difficult, Andre, because there is no report. There is no report to deliver. They never wrote it. They never completed their report," end quote. He later went on to say the following, Mr. President. What Nigel Clark said he was going to do was establish a website and put all the materials, all the evidential material and so on that were generated by the process of that commission of inquiry. Now the question is, Mr. President, if Mark Golding knows, as the government has long asserted, that there is no Finsac Commission of Inquiry report, why has he, like Julian Robinson and the other PNP members and supporters, been calling for the release of the quote-unquote Finsac report? How can a report that doesn't exist be released? What can go so? Oh, what a tangled web they weave, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
When at first they practice to deceive.
Thank you. Minister, Thank you very much, Senator Morgan. Senator Thompson.
Mr. President, I plan to be very judicious with my time. But I must say, before I get into my presentation, Mr. President, that and this smiling picture of me is not representative of what I'm about to say. It seems like we're still, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Jamaican people now, it seems like we continue to be in election mode. The elections were completed on September 3rd, 2025. And I must remind the members on the opposite side that the reason why some of this discourse takes place is because we are here today to talk about the appropriations bill. And nobody on the opposite side has sought to speak about the bill. We have the 25-year-old young senator who is not inspiring young people. We have the lecturer who comes here to give a history lesson and doesn't talk about the appropriations bill. And then we have Senator Brown here who is not talking anything about the appropriations bill. So let us refocus on the appropriations bill. I was until you made a statement about the young people in this country not being inspired. And you're a 25-year-old senator. You are a 25-year-old senator with a master's degree, and you are telling me that the young people in this country are not inspired. Mr. President, I rise to make my contribution today to the appropriations bill. But I do so with a very clear understanding, and that is, Mr. President, yes, Senator Bernard alluded to that. This is not a debate about figures on a page, nor any allocations across ministries, nor projections of growth. Yes, it is about the country that we are trying to build, and more importantly, how the people are living in the country. Because, Mr. President, when all is said and done, we are trying to change the lives of the Jamaican people, as my learned friend, Senator Bernard, who comes from a very good school, said. The Prime Minister has framed this budget as a movement from resilience to resurgence. And there is no doubt that Jamaica has demonstrated resilience. We have weathered shocks. We have stabilized our macroeconomic environment. We have preserved fiscal discipline. We have restored critical services in the aftermath of disaster. We have maintained investor confidence. We have brought unemployment to historic low levels. We are building, we are recovering, and we are advancing. But, Mr. President, I ask this honorable Senate, and by extension the Jamaican people, are we building a stronger country but leaving our people behind in their health? Nobody has mentioned health, even you who are aligned to health, Lamy. Because there is another reality running alongside our economic story. A quieter reality. Remember, they are hearing what is on my mic. A quieter reality, a more dangerous one, a more costly one. It is not unfolding in headlines. It is unfolding in our clinics, in our dialysis units, and in our homes. All right. So, a nation cannot prosper if its people are unwell. Right. Productivity declines, families are burdened, and the public purse is strained under preventable pressures. Non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular diseases are no longer peripheral concerns. They are now among the leading causes of death and disability in this country. The Ministry of Health and organizations like the Heart Foundation of Jamaica and other NGOs have consistently highlighted that excessive sugar consumption, particularly through sugar-sweetened beverages, is a major contributor to obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular diseases. And the data is not abstract, Mr. President. Over 75% of Jamaicans consume at least one sugary drink every day. Among adolescents, 69% consume carbonated beverages daily. Each additional sugary drink per day increases a child's risk of obesity by approximately 60%. And the cost, the economic burden alone is staggering. The projected cost of cardiovascular diseases and diabetes alone between 2017 and 2032 is approximately 77.1 billion Jamaican dollars. But treatment costs, lost productivity, and premature mortality. Mr. President, let us pause on that figure. That is not just a health statistic. That is an economic warning. That is a social warning. That is a national warning. Because we are not just treating illness, we are financing its consequences. It is for this reason, and I stand proudly with the Dr. Andrew Michael Holness-led administration, as we understand that health is not incidental to development, it is central to it. Mr. President, because of the massive strides in development that we have experienced under this administration, we can celebrate, and rightly so, the fact that Jamaica is approaching full employment. But employment without health is not sustainable prosperity. A workforce that is chronically ill cannot drive productivity. A family burdened by illness cannot build wealth. A nation overwhelmed by preventable disease cannot sustain growth. So when we speak about economic expansion, we must also speak about human capacity. Because the true engine of this economy is not infrastructure, it is the people. And if our people are unwell, then our progress is hampered. Mr. President, it is in this context that government's decision to reform the special consumption tax must be understood. This is not arbitrary. This is not opportunistic. This is targeted, evidence-based policy. Sugar-sweetened beverages are uniquely harmful. They are the largest source of added sugar in the diet. They provide high calories. Listen, Senator Brown. They provide high calories with little to no nutritional value. They are cheap, widely available, and heavily consumed. More importantly, liquid sugar behaves differently. It is rapidly absorbed. It does not trigger fullness. It leads to excess calorie consumption without awareness and causes rapid spikes in blood glucose and insulin levels, which can lead to visceral fat production and insulin resistance. A single 355 ml can of soda can contain nearly 9 teaspoons of sugar. If we look at the diagram, 1 teaspoon contains 4 grams of sugar, most times exceeding the recommended daily intake in 1 serving. Mr. President, we are not dealing with a marginal issue. We are dealing with a systemic one. Mr. President, this approach is not new, and it is not experimental. It is grounded in global and regional evidence. In Mexico, sugary drink purchases declined by approximately 9.7% following taxation. In Berkeley, California, similar policies resulted in increased water consumption by approximately 15%. In Barbados, sugary drink sales declined while healthier alternatives increased. The World Health Organization has recommended fiscal measures such as these as key strategies in combating obesity and non-communicable diseases. So the question is not whether this works. The question is whether we are prepared to act. Mr. President, we have heard the argument from the opposition that this measure will burden the poor. Let us examine that carefully. The evidence shows that lower-income households consume more sugary drinks. They allocate less of their budget to health and education as a result. They experience a higher burden of non-communicable diseases. So let us be clear. The poorest Jamaican is not burdened by this tax. The poorest Jamaican is burdened by preventable disease. Because illness does not just affect health, it affects income, opportunity, education, and dignity. Doing nothing is not neutral. Doing nothing is a decision. And it is a decision that allows harm. You see, we are caring and listening government. If only you would understand that and listen as well. So let me take a page out of Senator Morgan's book. Listen. And it is a decision that allows harm to continue. If we are serious about changing outcomes, then we must start where the problem begins. And increasingly, that is with our children. A recent survey conducted in 200, and the Minister of Education is here. A recent survey conducted in 203 schools to assess the readiness of schools to implement the National School Nutrition Policy revealed that of over 1,300 beverages being sold to our children, only 23% were compliant with national guidelines. Only 23%. And out of the 203 schools, only 1 school achieved full compliance to the interim guidelines for beverages, and that was the Cascade Primary and Infant in Buff Bay, Portland. That means the overwhelming majority of children are being exposed daily to high sugar beverages in school environments. Mr. President, we cannot accept that, because the habits formed in childhood become the outcomes of adulthood. So when we act, we are not just addressing today's problem, we are protecting tomorrow's generation. When we fully appreciate the positive direction that this administration is leading our great nation, we will recognize that the government is starting where the evidence is strongest, the consumption is highest, and the harm is greatest. Tackling sugar-sweetened beverages first is not optional. It is the most responsible and effective public health action available to protect our children. Mr. President, this budget demonstrates clearly that the government's approach is not limited to taxation. It contains a comprehensive investment in the health system. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has allocated $181.87 billion in recurrent expenditure. On the surface, this reflects a marginal decrease of 3% or $5.9 billion, compared with the $187.7 billion received in the 2025-2026 period. However, This apparent reduction is explained by arrears totaling 11.366 billion that were settled during the financial year 2025-2026, comprising 9.023 billion in retroactive salaries under Object 21 and 2.342 billion in program arrears. This includes expansion of the non-communicable disease program, rehabilitation of hospitals affected by Hurricane Melissa, digital health systems, and strengthened mental health infrastructure. This is not symbolic. This is structural. This is the building of a stronger, more resilient health system. While these allocations strengthen the ministry's ability to sustain service delivery and expand infrastructure, it must be noted that the demands on the health sector continue to grow. Accordingly, for financial year 2026-2027, the ministry is requesting a total budget of 190.087 billion, the net of AIA 725.516 million, representing an increase of 5% or $8.21 billion above the proposed ceiling for the recurrent budget of 181.876 billion. Let's delve into this a little bit more so that the people of Jamaica can understand. The table shown on the screen is broken down by what is called an object, and I will take you through each of them. Under Object 21, which is compensation of employees, an additional 500 million is being provided to support the recruitment of approved vacancies necessary for the phased opening of Western Children and Adolescent Hospital. Under Object 25, Mr. President, the use of goods and services, significant provisions have been made to support both recovery and modernization. An allocation of 6.243 billion is required for phase 2 of the Hurricane Melissa relief and recovery program, specifically to repair infrastructure at 5 hospitals, replace damaged equipment, and restore safe operating conditions. Without this funding, sections of these facilities would remain unstable, directly compromising patient safety and continuity of care in the affected communities. In addition, $327 million has been allocated for the electronic immunization registry, which will provide consolidated patient records at the point of care, supporting clinical decision-making, enable follow-up for missed vaccinations, and improve vaccine stock management. A further $495 million is earmarked to maintain fiber-optic infrastructure across 105 health facilities and to ensure the connection of electronic health records in 13 facilities across the island. I can tell you that is big. An additional 200 million is also being provided to support rehabilitation works at Bellevue Hospital, which is essential, which is essential to improving infrastructure and sustaining quality mental health services. Under Object 27, grants, contribution, and subsidies, $200 million has been allocated for the construction of upper corporate office for the Nursing Council of Jamaica, a critical step in strengthening governance, regulatory oversight, and the delivery of professional nursing services. Under Object 31, Mr. President, land, $246 million is being provided to facilitate the acquisition of land for the expansion of the Type 5 Health Center in Montego Bay, St. James. Turning now to the capital budget, Mr. President. The ministry has been allocated 13.825 billion for 2026-2027, representing a significant increase of 36% or 3.6 billion over the previous fiscal year. So this increase, well, you would know about Chaka Chaka. This increase would fund major health infrastructure projects, including completion of the Western Children and Adolescent Hospital, expanded investment in non-communicable disease programs and key health centers, including Spanish Town, continued redevelopment of Cornwall Regional Hospital, and the modernization of the University Hospital of the West Indies, with the start of a new tower. This level of strategic investment is being advanced under the steady and experienced leadership of the Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honorable Christopher Tufton. His continued focus on strengthening infrastructure, expanding access, and modernizing service delivery reflects a deliberate and sustained commitment to building a resilient and future-ready health system for the people of Jamaica. Mr. President, in advancing this debate, it would be incomplete indeed. It would be inaccurate if we spoke of the progress within our health sector as though it were achieved by our efforts alone. The truth is that the system we are now strengthening, the gains we are consolidating, and the future we are seeking to build have all been shaped in no small measure by the support and service of those beyond our shores who chose to stand with us. Jamaica's health sector has over the years been enriched by individuals whose commitment was not defined by nationality but by purpose. Mr. President, permit me at this juncture to pause to acknowledge the life and contribution of the late Dr. Tomlin J. Paul. Though Trinidadian by birth, his work was deeply embedded in Jamaica's medical and academic landscape, particularly through his service at the University of the West Indies. He was not only a physician, but an educator and institution builder, one who understood that the strength of a health system lies not only in infrastructure, but in the people it produces, the minds it shapes, and the standards it upholds. His legacy is therefore not confined to titles or positions. It lives on in the generations of professionals he influenced, myself included, and the system he helped to strengthen. May he rest in peace. And Mr. President, in many ways, the same spirit of service is reflected in the presence of the 260 Cuban healthcare professionals who have served within our public health system. They too have stood in our hospitals and clinics, often in areas of critical need, contributing quietly but significantly to the delivery of care across this country. Their work reminds us that healthcare is, at its core, a shared human endeavor, one that often transcends borders in the service of life and dignity. As was previously announced, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade advised the Embassy of Cuba that in light of no new bilateral agreement being concluded between the two countries, the government of Jamaica has decided to discontinue the current arrangements under the Cuban Technical Cooperation Program. So, as we now confront a period of transition, and as we move deliberately to strengthen our internal capacity and secure the long-term sustainability of our system, we must do so with balance, recognizing both the necessity of change and the value of those who have helped to carry us to this point. That, Mr. President, is the mark of a serious and responsible approach to governance. The Ministry of Health and Wellness has already expressed interest in engaging the Cuban healthcare workers directly and will work through that possibility in the coming days. However, the immediate withdrawal of these personnel will affect some services, but the government has acted responsibly to manage that transition. Given this gap, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has recommended to the Cabinet the implementation of short to medium-term interim mitigating measures to prevent further exacerbation of existing human resources for health shortages and to avoid significant disruption to public health service delivery across both primary and secondary care settings. In the short term, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will be working closely with the regional health authorities to activate contingency measures aimed at maintaining critical services across the public health system. These measures form part of the Ministry's short-term human resources for health surge plan and include the revision of duty rosters, the increased use of overtime and extended work hours, the targeted redeployment of staff from lower demand to higher demand areas, and the expanded engagement of sessional staff supported by the implementation of special triage protocols. In addition, there will be strengthened engagement with the private sector, particularly in areas such as radiotherapy services and cataract care. With respect to the Jamaica-Cuban Eye Care Program, operations continued up to Friday, March 20, 2026. And for the remainder of the program's operation, services were limited to surgical procedures. I know, I work with them. I know when they left. I know when they left. And I know their names. They are human beings. Limited, name one. Limited to surgical procedures for patients who had already been scheduled, as well as post-operative care, including retina-related treatment and monitoring. Patients who had previously undergone surgery were encouraged to attend their scheduled follow-up appointments to ensure proper recovery and continued eye health. In the interim, alternative arrangements were put in place to ensure the continuity of the screening programs through a combination of internal capacity and outsourcing. So the government is looking about whatever gaps there are. In the medium term, the ministry is advancing its recruitment drive and has identified several avenues through which human resource capacity will be strengthened. 70 specialist nurses from the diaspora have already responded to the ministry's advertisement and are currently being screened and placed as appropriate. In addition, 48 nurses and 33 doctors who are beneficiaries of the Dr. Barry Wint Scholarship Program have successfully completed their training, and in accordance with the terms of the scholarship, will enter service within the public health system. A further 100 nurses currently enrolled in the Specialist Nurses Program are expected to complete their training this year and will be promoted into their respective areas of specialization. The ministry is also in an advanced position with its negotiations with Ghana and Nigeria, with a target to finalize the relevant memoranda of understanding by the end of March 2026, and to commence the recruitment of specialists shortly thereafter. With respect to the Philippines, a memorandum of understanding has already been signed and discussions are ongoing to support a training program for the specialist nurses in the first instance. Engagements with India are also ongoing, both in relation to the finalization of a cooperation framework and the exploration of direct recruitment opportunities. As part of the ministry's broader human resources for health stabilization strategy, Cabinet has approved the establishment of a dedicated international recruitment unit within the Corporate Service Division. This unit will serve as a central coordinating hub for all international recruitment efforts, including those undertaken through bilateral cooperation arrangements and diaspora engagement. Its focus will be on addressing critical workforce shortages, particularly in specialized fields such as nursing, midwifery, intensive care, and other priority clinical areas. Taken together, Mr. President, these measures reflect a deliberate and structured approach, one that seeks to maintain continuity in the short term, strengthen capacity in the medium term, and secure sustainability for the future. Mr. President, it is therefore deeply regrettable that a matter of this nature, one grounded in healthcare delivery, international cooperation, and dignity of those who serve, has been drawn into the realm of political opportunism. This is not an issue that ought to be trivialized or reduced to talking points of partisan advantage. It concerns real people, real patients, and real systems of care. It calls for seriousness, for balance, and for a shared commitment to the national interest. To suggest otherwise or to seek to inflame public concern without due regard for the facts or the transition measures already in place does a disservice not only to the professionals involved, but to the Jamaican people who rely on a stable and responsibly managed health system. Mr. President, this budget presents a choice, not a theoretical choice, not a distant choice, but a real and immediate one. We can continue as we have, treating disease after it takes hold, absorbing the cost and managing the consequences. Or we can act to prevent it, to reduce it, and to change the course of it. Because the truth is this: no country can claim progress if its people are getting sicker while it grows. No economy can be truly strong if its workforce is unwell. No society can be truly secure if its families are burdened by preventable illness. So, Mr. President, this moment demands more than comfort. It demands clarity, it demands courage. The measures before us are not always easy. They are not always popular, but they are responsible. And leadership, Mr. President, is not measured by ease. It is measured by the willingness to act in the long-term interests of the people. So when this budget is judged, it will not be judged only by the growth rates or the fiscal outcomes. It will be judged by something far more meaningful. Whether fewer Jamaicans are entering our hospitals for conditions that could have been prevented. Whether more families are spared the burden of disease. Whether more children are given a healthier start in life. Whether the progress we speak of is finally felt, not just in the economy, but is in the lives of our people. That is the standard, that is the responsibility, and that is the Jamaica we must build. Not only stronger, but healthier. And for this reason, Mr. President, I support the passage of this bill. This bill may please the Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Thompson. Minister?
Mr. President, clearly we've had a very full and, in cases, exciting day. I'm going to comment on just two things. First of all, Dr. Elon Thompson brought us back to the appropriation bill. He picked out one of the main items in the revenue measures to deal with and dealt with it in the way that we talked about it at Cabinet, and the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance talked about it. It is a combination of, yes, revenues, but looking after the Jamaican people in terms of what sugar does to us. It was excellent, Dr. Thompson. Give him a round of applause again, please. Senator Ramon Small Ferguson started off the batting. I'm not going to take on everything, but I want to just make one thing clear for Jamaicans, because oil is a very important issue at this time. I lived for a long time in the Middle East. I traded oil myself on my own account. When you're doing futures, it's a bet. Today, oil on NYMEX traded between $105.25 and $114.81. If you have today to say, look, what am I going to do if I do futures? Do I expect it to go higher? If I expect it to go higher, I buy a call. I say I'll buy a call for $120 within the next 60 days. If I think it's going to go down, I buy a put. I believe that the war in Iran is going to be done in 60 days. I believe, therefore, the price will go down. So I'm going to buy a put at a strike price of, say, 60 or 55. Okay? So, Mr. President, please just this, because this is important for Jamaicans. To go into the hedging business as a government is a very, very, very risky business. You do that with your own money or investors' money who agree that you should do that. So we have to look at that carefully. The suggestion made by Senator Donna, not Smallford, Donna Scott Motley, who left, that we should probably have a working group that look at oil. I think it's a good suggestion. Where I differ with her is that she joined the pink team. The senator in pink and everybody to her left went way over left. And therefore, on the Cuban issue, she went on the left side of things. Well, I will stand with the statement made by our own Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, that said, we love freedom. We really appreciate what the Cubans have done for us, but ours are a different situation, and he and our foreign minister have taken care of it very, very well. It would be good for you to listen, because you clearly didn't hear it. So, Mr. President, I want to say thanks as well I know that you talked about my ministry, Senator Bernard, Senator Alan Bernard. I noticed what you did. You could have, for instance, said, look, what was done at border was really, really very good. No. You went on and said, it's only at border. No. We went around to St. James, Hanover, to St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland. We put in generators. We fixed restaurants right up there in the top in Hanover. We did a lot of things you don't know. But also, yesterday I spoke to Minister... so he shouldn't speak. I spoke to Minister Williams about how much more we're going to get, and you'll hear more about that. Mr. President, after all this discussion, and the truth is my endorphin level has gone up, I have had quite a bit of fun listening to my colleagues. I now move for the second reading of the bill.
Thank you very much, Minister. The question is that the bill be read for a second time. Those in favour? Aye. Mr. Clark?
A bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2027 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament read a second time.
Thank you very much. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. While we are in committee, I just need to apologize for Leader Scott Motley, who indicated that she had a personal difficulty and had to leave in the middle of Senator Thompson's presentation, and she asked me to convey to you that she had no alternative but to leave. Members, I put clauses 1, 2, and 3. Those in favour? Against? I put the schedule, sections 2 and 3. Those in favour? I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favour? Against? The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favour? Against? I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Minister?
The bill be read for the third time.
Thank you very much. The question is that the bill be read for a third time. In favour? Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2027 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament read a third time and passed.
Thank you very much. Minister and Senator Brown, I just want to thank all of you who, well, most of you participated in the debate, and we were able to keep the debate fairly manageable. And I appreciate the fact that we stuck to the time frame that has been given. When the State of the Nation comes around, based on this experiment, each member will be given 15 minutes. That's just a bit of humor. I'm asked by the clerk to just give me a pen to inform you that there is a snack downstairs by way of sandwiches, I think, if you want to eat something before you head off to the National Stadium. Thank you very much. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Aye. This Honourable Senate now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Thank you. Thank you all.
four-part docuseries Building a Better Public Sector, premiering Sunday, March 8 at 1 p.m. with a rebroadcast on Mondays at 9 p.m. Presented by the Transformation Implementation Unit.
This Saturday, the spotlight shines on the Jamaica Women's Premier League with a thrilling doubleheader showdown at the JWM Anthony Spalding Sports Complex. First up at 3 p.m., it's a fierce battle as Fraser's Whip FC, the defending champions, entertains Michael FC.
Well, I feel the chances that we will go all the way. You know, we have 5 girls who are away with the under-17, with the Jamaica under-17 team. And I know when they get back, we will be stronger going forward.
Expect intensity, skill, and a fight for crucial points as both teams look to make their mark. And then at 6 p.m., the excitement continues. Can Arnett Gardens FC extend their perfect record when they clash with Cavalier in what promises to be a high-energy showdown under the lights?
Well, as you can see now, we are lead the table, we not take nothing for granted.
2 strong teams, 1 big statement to make. This is the Jamaica Women's Premier League.
I'm Cole Hawker. This is PBCJ, the People Station.
It's Friday, March 27th. In the headlines, Education Transformation Oversight Committee says education reform hits 37% progress. In business news, Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Commerce join forces to help small businesses. Regionally, the United Nations declares the transatlantic trade the gravest crime against humanity. And in sports, Reggae Boys hold firm against New Caledonia to advance to final playoff. This is the weekend news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, has expanded its service with the introduction of a new route, 612, linking Spanish Town St. Catherine and Oterias St. Anne. According to the state-run bus company, the move is aimed at improving connectivity between key towns, while providing commuters with more efficient and reliable transportation. The new route is expected to offer a direct link between the South Central and North Coast regions, reducing travel time and improving access to work, school, and leisure. Under the fare structure, adults will pay $400 cash or $350 with a smart fare card. Senior citizens will pay $200 using the card, while students, children, and persons with disabilities will also pay $200. The JUTC is encouraging commuters to use smart fare cards to access discounted fares and a smoother travel experience. Education transformation is steadily advancing, with the Trend program reporting a 37% implementation rate, up 5 points since the last update. Project lead Dr. Venice Morrison-Leon outlined the major gains in governance, teacher training, early childhood education, and post-disaster support during the latest Education Transformation Oversight Committee quarterly media briefing.
Reporting to those gathered, Dr. Morrison-Leon says progress is being made across multiple pillars, beginning with governance and accountability in schools.
We are currently at 37% in terms of our implementation and our progress. This represents a 5-point increase since the last period, and as was informed by our chair in our Q4 press conference, we will provide greater details on our implementation activities and our progress.
She shares that new governance guidelines are now being tested across 5 education regions, while more Jamaicans are stepping forward to serve on school boards.
The revised governance guidelines were developed, and our qualification standards are being tested across 5 of our regions, regions 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The focus remains on putting capable individuals in place to strengthen school-level governance. The reality is, colleagues, when we have strong governance in our schools, the success is inevitable. All right? And so we are making sure that we improve our governance structures in our schools. To date, the National Council has received over 100 applications for volunteers to serve on school boards.
Her update also highlighted gains in early childhood education, with teacher retention and training expanding across the sector.
As it relates to teacher support, ECD 4 addresses quality of teaching and learning in our early childhood institutions. And we want to report that we have retained, through our HOPE temporary trained teacher program, 302 teachers, and in September 2026, we're going to be adding 108 teachers. So we will have 410 teachers in our early childhood institutions.
Thousands of educators and stakeholders are also being trained to strengthen teaching and learning nationwide.
TG1 targeted retraining of our teachers, and over 7,186 primary school teachers and principals benefited from training. Over 1,898 of our stakeholders participated in training and received literacy support. And for that, we are very grateful.
Dr. Marison Leon says additional support from psychosocial services to learning kits has also been rolled out as the Education Ministry continues to modernize Jamaica's school system. Reporting for the news on PBCJ, I am Denita Rodney.
Firefighters are first on the scene when emergencies strike, putting their lives on the line to protect others and to save property. In part 2 of this feature, Denita Rodney takes a closer look at the people behind the uniform and the work they do.
When they're not battling unpredictable flames, what keeps firefighters busy?
Well, we do a lot of things when we're not responding. Some of us love to cook here, so you will find that we put together and we run both as Jamaicans, I say, yes. Also, we do a lot of training. And if you can look outside, you'll see a boat, a floaty. So, well, it's not really a floaty, it's a blow-up boat. So we train in water training, we do rescue, fire rescue, we do extrication, that is motor vehicle extrication. So we'll go to areas, we'll find cars that are abandoned, we find the owners and get their permission, and then we'll use them to train. We train, we cook, we go out in the communities, we collaborate with the community, we do what you call familiarization tours. So we'll go into the community, business community, we will see what they are doing, how they store their stuff, that in case we are called upon to respond to an emergency there, we have an idea what the facility is like. We also go into schools at times. We have morning devotions with them. All the primary schools in Yalas, we have covered all of them in devotions.
To take on the flames, firefighters need the right gear. What essential gear and tools do firefighters rely on?
2, 1, ground. So this is how we descend the ladder. One person standing by to ensure the safety of the person who is climbing down from the ladder. So when we count him down, he knows exactly where he is on the ladder so that he does not hurt himself. So here we have a firefighter in his PPE. He has his helmet. On this helmet, we also have a visor. The helmet is here to protect his head from any falling debris. The visor protects his face from any spill, from anything that is flying from a distance, that it doesn't damage his face in general. We have the jacket here. When you open the jacket, you can see that it has an inner lining. This inner lining protects the firefighter from heat, it protects him from cold, it protects him from being wet, because on the back you have another lining which is slightly waterproof or water resistant. Also, I want to point out something which is in the jacket. This is a safety mechanism. In case a firefighter is down, we can drag a firefighter to safety. We also have his gloves to protect his hands from any. These gloves, they are heat resistant, so we can hold hot zincs and so forth with these gloves. The pants is similar to the jacket, also has an inner lining, the same material as the jacket. We have his boots. Two key things about this boot is that this boot has a steel in the toe. So if any debris or anything heavy falls on his feet, the steel is there to protect his toe. Also, the bottom of the boot is somewhat oil resistant. So if he steps in any oil, he does not slip. Or slip resistance, I should say. If he steps in an oily area, he won't slide very easily. This is the cab where the men travel when we are responding to an emergency. And if you look closely on those blue-looking cylinders, you see they have what we call a back plate. That is how we put them on. We wear them like a knapsack. It is called a BA set, or a breathing apparatus set. That is what we use when we are going into areas that have toxic smokes and those things that are not conducive to life. That is what we use to protect our lungs.
In a weather update, Jamaicans are being advised that a trough currently across the Western Caribbean is expected to linger across the region through to early next week. Therefore, expect an increase in rainfall activities across Jamaica beginning Friday afternoon through to Sunday. According to the Meteorological Service, the forecast is for mostly cloudy conditions with periods of showers and thunderstorms, which may be heavy at times, to affect sections of most parishes, primarily southern and northeastern parishes, especially during the afternoons. Fishers and other marine interests, especially inshore and offshore the south coast, should exercise caution as sea conditions will deteriorate in the vicinity of showers and thunderstorms. Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Welcome to today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing you the developments shaping markets, capital access, and business decision-making across Jamaica and the region. Let's get into the stories that matter. When you see myself and Finance Minister Favor Williams in the same room, you know something big is going to happen. And that was the quote from Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Mick Aubin-Hill, yesterday when he made these comments to the filled to capacity room of small business owners yesterday at the Exim Bank conference room, who came to hear how government plans to make access to government contracts easier. In fact, the room held the major players of the business ecosystem, who came out yesterday to the call of Garnet Reed, president of the Small Business Association of Jamaica. Milverton Reynolds, Chairman of the Public Procurement Commission, PPC. Mrs. Nadia Morris, Executive Director of the PPC. Dr. David Lowe, Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica. Errol Barnaby, the Acting CEO of the Exim Bank. And Sansia Bennett Templar, MIC Permanent Secretary, came out to throw their weight behind the SBAJ's drive for government contracts. Finance Minister Favour Williams said that currently only 1% of government contracts goes to the micro sector of the business community, and that is going to change.
Today's meeting is about more than procurement rules and administrative procedures. It is about opportunity. You hear me? Yes. Opportunity. It is about growth. And it is about ensuring that more Jamaican businesses, especially our micro and small enterprises, are able to participate meaningfully in government contracting.
Both ministers gave their commitment to ensuring that the systems become smoother and easier for small business owners to access government contracts worth billions of dollars. For the trading period of March 26, 2026, the most actively traded securities were Trans-Jamaica Highway Limited with 4,057,618 units, representing 15.28% of market sales activities. Supreme Ventures Limited with 3,726,863 units, representing 14.03% of market sales activity. Kingston Wharves Limited with 2,002,746 units, representing 7.54% of market sales activities. Investor activity remained concentrated in transportation, gaming, and logistics play, signaling continued interest in dividend-producing and strategic assets. Turning to the foreign exchange market based on Bank of Jamaica data for March 26, 2026, Forex traders recorded significant activity with strong demand across major currencies. For the US dollar, trading margins reflected steady liquidity, with the US selling at $158.94 and buying at $157.10. For the Canadian dollar, moderate gains supported by $5.73 transaction spreads. The Canadian dollar sold for $109.79 and was bought for $115.52. For the British pound, continued volatility offered short-term trading opportunities of 75 cents in profits for the banks. The British pound sold for $211.13 and was bought for $211.88. These movements underscore the importance of cash flow timing and currency awareness for businesses managing import costs, debt servicing, or overseas exposure. For our credit report tip of the day, we still don't talk enough about the financial side of menopause, and that silence is costly. There's also a hard truth we need to acknowledge. Many women enter menopause financially exposed, and the women who navigate it best financially are often the ones who built options, access, and flexibility before they needed it. The credit report may be invisible in this conversation, but it has the power to quietly carry you through it. And this is where the conversation needs to evolve. Menopause is not just a health event, it's a financial risk period. And like any risk period, it requires preparation, structure, and tools. One of the most underutilized tools, your credit profile. Not just your score, but the full architecture behind it. Payment history, credit utilization, available limits, diversity of accounts, access to affordable capital. Why does this matter during menopause? Because this phase often introduces unpredictability, unpredictable energy, unpredictable focus, and sometimes unpredictable income or productivity. And unpredictability requires flexibility. And that is what a strong credit position gives you. And that's today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing you clarity to capital markets and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay intentional, and keep building forward.